made, but you are making my heart change shape. That's what Jesus does as we come to know him. He makes our hearts change shape. And at this meal, at this Last Supper, Jesus is preparing his closest followers for what they are going to face. They are thinking their minds are made about who Jesus is. The people that sit there at the table with him, they've decided that this is the Messiah. And they've got in their mind what it means for him to be the Messiah, to overcome the oppressors that come against them. And what is going to happen after this is he's going to make their heart change shape. What they were thinking actually isn't what they thought was going to happen. I'm not going to look at this whole text. Maybe if we've got time at the end, you might have questions, or you can just come and ask me if you've got questions about the text that I don't cover. But what I want to just do is focus on a few verses in this interaction between Jesus and his disciple. And maybe as we get into it, I've got a question for you. Who is the most successful person that you know? As you think of success, who do you think of as success? It might be a famous person, like one of those on the screen, or it might be someone that you just know personally. But when you think of success, who do you think of? Maybe you want to tell the person next to you. I'll just give you a moment to do that. What is it about that person that makes them successful in your eyes? Person next to you. When you think of a successful person, who is it, and why do you think of them as successful? All right, hopefully you've had a chance to reflect on that a little bit together with somebody else. What do you think of in terms of success? In this story, what I think is happening, Jesus is with his disciples and he's turning a picture upside down for everyone who wants to learn from him. It's for the disciples who are in the room, but it's also for us. He's turning a picture upside down. I don't know if you've seen those upside down images where you look at it one way and then you look at it upside down and it's a different picture. There was an advertisement from Jeep a few years ago with these ones. What do you see there? Anyone see it? What's the picture? A cow, yeah. Giraffe. Close, yeah. So giraffe. The face of giraffe. You can see a giraffe now? A bird that's been shot, okay. Yeah, that's because if you turn it upside down, Hugh's already looking upside down at the penguin. You look at it the other way up. Hugh's an upside down looker, we know that. The next one we have, what do you see there? Your deer. Yeah, you're right, it's a seal when you look at it the other way up. And then there, you got an elephant. But if you look at it upside down, you see a swan. Here's one that's a little bit different. This is a person. Who are you seeing? Do you know that person? Adele, the famous singer Adele. But if you look at her upside down, whoa, what's happening there? Same image, turned upside down. Sometimes what we think we're seeing is actually different to what is happening in reality. Sometimes what you think looks fine is actually a distortion of how it should be. Last week at this meal, Jesus talked about his body being given. This is my body given to you. This is my blood poured out for you. It's a new promise. And as we've seen today, just after he talks about this, he says there's someone sitting at this table who is going to betray me. And the disciples are like, no way, who would that be? That is definitely not me. And they start having an argument together about who would or would not betray Jesus. You can imagine James is sitting there and he says, I can imagine Thaddeus doing something like that. And Thaddeus is like, no way would I do that. Like, people are just starting to get to know who I am. That would destroy my reputation if I were to betray Jesus. Yeah, maybe someone among us who's not as popular as the other, maybe Matthew could betray Jesus because he doesn't have as far to fall, you see. And Matthew's like, what? No way, I wouldn't do that. Peter's the rash one amongst us. Peter goes out and does stupid things all the time. It's Peter who would do it. Peter's like, what? I wouldn't do it. Like, did Jesus give you the nickname the Rock? He didn't call you the Rock, did he? And Jesus is observing this conversation amongst the disciples. And he says something very important about who is the most important. They also started to argue. They disagreed about which of them was thought to be the most important person. And Jesus says to them, the kings of the Gentiles hold power over their people. And those who order them around call themselves protectors or benefactors. It's like these leaders say, I can tell you what to do because I'm protecting you. You better do what I say because I'm protecting you. I've got power here. Jesus says, but you must not be like that. Instead, the most important among you should be like the youngest. Why the youngest? Is it because younger people are more important than older people? And the younger people said, yeah, that's exactly right. Well, in Jesus' day, maybe that's not so much today, but the youngest people didn't think they were the most important. Youngest people think they're most important today. But in Jesus' day, they didn't think they're most important because everyone told them they didn't count. Everyone told them they weren't important. And they said, you should be like that. Don't think of yourself as the most important. The one who rules, the one who's in charge, the one who leads should be like the one who serves. Who is more important, he says? Is it the one at the table or the one who serves? An obvious question. The one at the table is the more important person. That's why they've got a servant to come and serve. That's what Jesus says. It's the one at the table. That's the more important person in the room. But then he says a confusing thing. He says, but I'm among you as one who serves. Many people in our world today, as well as back in Jesus' day, think greatness, importance, is defined by success. If you've made it to the top, if you've become the leader, then you're more important. Jesus is in the same room but is looking at things differently. And what he's saying to his disciples in this room is he's saying the ground that you're standing on to measure who's the most important person, that ground is an illusion. You're measuring importance in the wrong way. What you think you're seeing is a skewed perception of reality. You're looking at things the wrong way up. The person with the most power over other people is what you think defines importance or greatness. Some of us might think of that when we look at people who are more successful than us. Maybe we look at people who are successful. I don't know who it was that you think of when you think of success. But maybe you look at them and go, they're more important than me. They're more successful. So they must be the most important. It's the person with the biggest following or the person with more power over more people. It's the influence. Maybe for you, You're like, it's not that their success makes them most important. I don't think that. But maybe you think, at least it does make them more important than me. And I'd ask, why do you think they're more important than you? What makes them more important? I think Jesus is saying here, greatness or important is not defined by how many people a person holds power over, or how many people come under a person's influence or their leadership, regardless of whether that influence and leadership is good or bad. He's saying that is not the mark of importance. The reality is, lots of people come under Jesus' leadership. Back in when he was on this earth walking around, lots of people began to follow him. And today, lots of people follow Jesus. He's saying looking at how many people come under a person's influence is not a good measure of a person's greatness. So what might be a good measure then? He says it's not how many people come under that person that makes them great, but it's how a person comes under others. Greatness is defined by how a person serves. Jesus' life is the demonstration of this, is it not? If you haven't looked into the life of Jesus and the way that he does this, this is what I would recommend you do. We run a course here called Alpha, which we're going to be running after Easter. It looks at who Jesus is in his life. And you see this right through his life. He spends his energy including the unincluded and defending those who are defenseless. He puts himself in the firing line of the religious authorities when he sees them doing things that are unhelpful and not right for other people. He gives this picture to his disciples of washing their feet. I can imagine the disciples singing that song. I was trying to find my way. I was thinking my mind was made. You're making my heart change shape. And at this meal, they're thinking that their mind is made about who he is and what he's going to do. He's the Messiah. He's going to conquer. He is going to raise up as king. But what Jesus is really about to do is the thing that makes their heart change. It's not only at your baptism that your heart's changed. He continues to reshape your heart and your perceptions and your approach as you learn your life through him. It's a curious thing, isn't it? Who looks at that first picture and just sees like a normal, you think it's a normal face? That's what I see. Some of the altogether, like immediately when I put the picture up, they're like, whoa, gross. But the way I was like, how on earth does this work? It looks normal the wrong way up. So what they've done is that the face is flipped over, but the eyes and the mouth are kept the right way up. And scientists think that most of us don't recognize how an upside down face looks wrong because we're not used to looking at upside down faces to read emotion. And so we just go, yeah, okay, that face is upside down. If you see it as wrong immediately, then you're more advanced than most of us. The disciples are not ready for how Jesus' leadership looks right because they've become so used to a distortion of good leadership, a distortion of importance and greatness. It's leadership with some of the things that look right, but altogether not right. And it's probably the same for us, that we look at leadership in the world, and it's so easy for us to not see where it's wrong. until we begin to see differently, until we begin to see the way that Jesus teaches us to see, to look for it, to learn to, if you like, read the emotion on an upside-down face. And it's not until afterwards the disciples look back on this moment, they're able to see what Jesus is doing to use power properly. Because Jesus is, after this meal, about to humble himself under every person, dying for them before they knew what they needed. Here's Jesus' point from this meal and what he does afterwards. Jesus' death is a demonstration of a proper use of power. It's a demonstration of right leadership. It's not despite Jesus being all-powerful that he lays down his life. It's not despite being all-powerful that he lays down his life. Rather, it's because he is all-powerful that he's able to. That's a mind flip. It's because he's all-powerful. Most people are not able to because they don't have the power. It looks like weakness, what Jesus is doing, but only the very strongest are able to use power in this way. It's using power the right way up. It's the right way up, even though it initially appears upside down to the disciples, and it still does to us, until we get used to looking at it that way. That this is power. This is success. This is greatness. I do think it's important, though, to recognize, or to note maybe, that Jesus is not against success. He's not against influence. I think what he's doing here is he's just showing that success, greatness, are not a good evidence of power used well. So when you think about the most successful person that you know, and you ask whether or not they're great, or whether they're greater than you maybe, you need to consider the extent to which they serve out of what God has given them. I did this same kind of talk at the All Together, and I was talking to Levi, my 9-year-old, afterwards. His hero, his measure of success is Messi, Lionel Messi, a soccer player. And he says, Dad, Messi is successful because he gives lots and lots of money to hospitals in Argentina. Because when he was a kid, he had a disease that meant he couldn't grow properly. And his family was poor, so they couldn't afford it. And it was Barcelona Football Club that paid for him to have treatment because they saw his potential. But Messi now gives away his money serving people that need it. I was like, yeah, you get it. That's it. That's success. That's greatness. Jesus' intention is that his disciples would learn to do what he does. To serve. To be successful. So that they will be prepared for the great task of leadership that is ahead of those who will become like him. Because this is immediately what he says to his disciples after that. He says, you have stood by me in my troubles. You're the ones who are with me, who are willing to learn from the difficult things that I've had to go through. He said, I will give you a kingdom, just as my Father gave me a kingdom. What does it mean to be given a kingdom? It means to be a leader. It means to be a prince. It means to be in a place of authority, of influence. Then you will eat and drink at my table in my kingdom, and you will sit on thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. Let's pray. Jesus, thank you for helping us to see things properly. Learning to see things upside down so that they're made right in this world. Help us to learn from your leadership and teach us to serve like you. Amen. We have some space for questions if people have.